So I asked you to think about this question in your thought primer. What is an idea? I wonder how you answered that. I think I mentioned in a much earlier lecture on a totally different topic that I think of thoughts as mental events. And they're a particular kind of mental event. They're a mental event of aboutness. In other words, when I have a thought, there's always a subject of the thought. I may have a thought about a banana, or I may have a thought about some emotional experience that I'm having, or a pain in my toe. There's always a subject of the thought. So one question would be is, well, by that definition, are all thoughts ideas? Seems clear that all ideas are thoughts, right? But are all thoughts ideas? When Locke was confronted with this question, he came up with an answer that I think it's similar to what I'm suggesting to you, but it's better, not surprisingly. Locke answered this question by saying an idea is a conceptualized experience. Now think about what's embedded in just these two words. So, true to form, Locke is stating here that ideas are inextricably bound to experience. Okay, the ideas that we have come from experience. And when we call these things ideas, what we're saying is I've had some sort of an experience that I've turned into a concept. I've conceptualized the experience. I've changed it from something that took place sensorily, physically, and I've turned it into a mind property or a mental event. And then Locke proceeds to then really break down this idea of idea. He starts to do almost like an anatomy of ideas. And he begins by saying, not all ideas are the same. There are some ideas that are really simple. They can't be broken down into component parts. Okay, so he would be thinking of things like whether something is solid, what color something is, what its mass is, what its shape is, what's its position, is it moving? Okay, so some ideas, Locke says, they're really simple ideas, and they're unlike an idea like car. Car is not a simple idea. I can continue to break down all the thought of car into all of its component parts. It's like, well, in order to have a car, you're going to have wheels, and you're going to have an engine, and you're going to have seats, and I can keep breaking this down. But Locke says that eventually you'll get to this point where you're looking at, I've got the steering wheel, but I can break that down into what it's made out of. And then I can break it down into its shape, and then I can break it down into its size. And now we're starting to get to those simple ideas that Locke says exist. So when we're confronted with like a full water bottle, let's say, Locke would say, okay, you're having an idea about this water bottle, okay? And the idea that you're having about it could be, or the thoughts that you're having about it, could be broken down into some really simple ideas. So you look at this and you think like, well, it's cylindrical. It's hollow. It's got a particular weight when it's full of water. It's got a particular texture to it, a particular color to it. It's got a particular temperature to it. You can wrap it with your knuckle like Descartes did with the candle wax, and you can have it make a particular sound. And it has a particular location where it is, or a particular position where it is. And Locke says this is one kind of idea that you have. You have these very simple ideas that can then come together in combination with one another and create this experience of the water bottle. So Locke says when you're having this experience of thinking about the water bottle, what's really happening is you're taking all of these simple ideas and you're grouping them together. Sort of like cylindricalness plus hollowness plus 2 pounds plus smooth plus blue and so on and so forth gets me to water bottle. This idea of water bottle is made up by all of these simple ideas coming into relation with one another. Now, there's another kind of idea that Locke says we can have, and that is we can have complex ideas. Okay, so we can have just not the idea of water bottle, but we can also have the idea of camping gear, right? So we can get compounds of a bunch of simple ideas and come up with things like, hey, a human being, an army, beauty, gratitude, the universe. We recognize that in each one of those things, we could break them down into their component parts. Right? We could take, well, a human being has an arm, another arm, hopefully, a leg, another leg, hopefully, and so on and so forth. But we can't really do that with things like color. or things like how much something weighs. It just weighs what it weighs. It's not a compound of other ideas. We can have ideas of relations. Now think about how these are much more complex than those simple ideas. To say that something is smaller or taller or before or after or bigger than something else requires that you have knowledge of this something else. So you've got to have the ability to take your ideas about two different things or more than two different things, and you've got to be able to compare them with one another to come up with some description of a relationship. And then, of course, Locke says you can have these really complex ideas that are so much more complex than like the weight of something, and you can create generalizations or abstractions even, like democracy is an idea. Blueness, friendliness, fatness, these are all abstractions. And for Locke, they're very complex ideas. They're not just as simple as the texture that something has or the size that something is. These are ideas that we build in our mind by taking groups of simple ideas and combining them together to create new, much more complex ideas. All right, so now what we need to do is see, well, how does Locke connect his theories about ideas and conceptualized experiences, and how does he turn that into a theory of knowledge?